Hey, this is Brookes. I've got some time, I've got an idea, and I've got a cup of coffee. A lot of coffee, really. Multiple cups over many days, hours and hours. So let's forge a character. What I'm doing with this Forge a Character is quite a bit more than usual. First of all, I'm designing a non-playable character for the game that Mark and I are making called Shackleton, which stars the lamb Jacqueline here. This character had a few requirements. First, she was going to be a young girl, she was going to be a prisoner in the setting of the game, which is a large prison, and she's meant to be a singer. Now, since most of the denizens of this prison are animals like Jacqueline, I landed on a guinea pig for this character because apparently, and I did not know this, they chirp. So our NPC is a guinea pig. She's a GP NPC. Now stick around, ladies and gentlemen, because the second dimension is not the final destination for our video. This is in fact concept art that I intend to turn into a sculpted 3D character by the end of what you're watching. This is an extremely time-intensive process, and it's one thing to create 3D characters, which I've done quite a bit through the years, but actually recording it proved to be something of an issue over a couple weeks' time. In fact, I ended up sculpting the character about 4 times over before I figured out some technical issues with some of my software. What I'm doing with the character art here is creating a turnaround, drawings of the character from multiple angles. Except it's not very thorough. I've only done a 3/4 view and a side view. The reason being that this is a jumping off point. The accuracy of the model matching the art isn't immensely important to me, and ultimately I'm not handing this art over to someone else to model. And that's what a turnaround really is most of the time. It's an effective means of communication between a designer and an animator, a modeler, or another designer. And here I'm just communicating with myself. Here's some brief footage from one of the attempts that I made at modeling this character, where I was actually filming my computer screen just to get the footage for you guys. This of course did not work, and it did not solve my crashing issues, but it shows you briefly the interface that I'm working in. This program is called zBrush. It's an incredible piece of software that I wish I had when I started 3D work almost 15 years ago. 3D models are typically comprised of polygons, with usually 3 or 4 points to each polygon that come together in sort of flat faces to make a model. And for the longest time, you would start at the boxiest, squarest point when creating your models and working your way out, which was very tedious for things like organic objects, including most characters. zBrush, though, allows you to push and pull and mold hundreds of thousands of polygons at once, as if they were clay, so that you can establish the organic shapes we want really quickly. You'll see me here sculpting out each piece of our GP NPC as separate objects or subtools. And you'll see that I modeled the mouth of the character open. In 3D, it's much easier to start with an open mouth and close it later, rather than the other way around. And since this character is a singer, we anticipate a bit of jawing from her in-game. There are really only a few tools in zBrush that are like your bread and butter, kind of like a real sculptor's toolkit. There are brushes that allow you to build up or erase clay, smooth out areas, or add creases. And all of this is going to be way too much detail to actually be ported directly into our game. There are hundreds of thousands of polygons in this final model, but in the process we'll eventually have a much lower resolution version of this object that actually retains the detail of the higher one through 2D maps laid over it. 3D is complicated, but it's super cool. I still have some refinements to make after this turntable, like the skirt. It's a little bit too flared out at the bottom. And briefly here you see me thinking about using Z-spheres, which are just another tool that's in zBrush, to create the ribbon that's tying her bonnet, since it's a long, complex, looping string, essentially. But I decided to model it in pieces instead. And the same for the bow that's on her back, just keeping the ends off of the loops a little bit thicker to match the band. Now, here's where the normal process diverges from what I'm making to show you guys, because the next step in my process involves bringing this model into another program called 3D Coat and manually making a lower resolution version of it, which is so tedious that I wouldn't show it to you. From there, I would paint on the character for the game. However, there are some painting tools inside zBrush that I don't use very often, but will help you to see the character at about 90% complete, even if the model is still high resolution. Here I loaded in my original 2D concept art so that I can faithfully choose those same colors to put on the character. The coloring here is pretty flat and smooth, and I'm filling in on individual objects. And where I would really usually add some more painterly texture to the color, I'm just using really soft shading. It's difficult when you're texturing in 3D because you usually already have some artificial light already being cast on the model, so any shade or light that you add needs to be subtle and able to adapt to changes in lighting environments. And at this point, we're starting to finish up our character. There's of course a lot more work to do, and we haven't even gotten into rigging the character up with a skeleton so that they can move, and from there actually animating them. But for my first time sharing 3D work with you guys in a video, I feel like this was a substantial amount of information, not to mention hours upon hours of work. I'm just glad that it's finally finished and ready for you to see. I'm looking forward to making more 3D videos in the future. If you'd like to support the channel and support the development of our game Shackleton, you can head over to patreon.com/bageldenizen. There's a ton you can get in return there, including personalized 5-minute video critiques of your work from me, which have been turning out to be super valuable to folks as I get their videos back to them. I'm making 2 videos a week on Character Design Forge. Subscribing lets you know when new videos are made available, and my username is bageldenizen on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch. Thank you for watching, and have fun creating.